Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our new session, Session 8 of the Sathya Sai Education and Human Values Program, online course 1. Isn't it wonderful that so many people from different parts of the world are gathered for the noblest cause of all, to learn about our true nature that manifests itself by practicing human values in everyday life? Well, my name is Esma Gadzo-Bursic and I'm from Croatia. I will be your facilitator for today's session. And on behalf of our coordinating team and my own behalf, I would like to greet you and wish you a beautiful and inspiring session with us today. In previous sessions, as you surely remember, we talked and learned about the philosophy of Sathya Sai Educare, as well as the universal human values of love, truth, righteousness, peace, non-violence, and the cultivation of character. Today, we are going to have first presentation of 40 minutes, then we will have 5 minutes break, then the second presentation of 20 minutes immediately followed by workshop. And we are not going to have question and answer session, but in case you have any questions, you are welcome to send them to us by email. We will be glad to answer you later on, of course. Today's session is very special. I feel honored and privileged to announce that it is about the founder of this program, Sri Sathya Sai Baba, his life, work, and teachings, as well as the history of Sathya Sai education and human values. After hearing this beautiful presentation, you will understand why he is considered by many as one of the greatest teachers of all times. Before introducing you to our first speaker today, I would like to remind you all to keep your microphones muted and cameras turned off during the presentation, to ensure a smooth ongoing program. If you haven't yet done so, I will also remind you to name yourselves on your device. That helps us with the attendance list. Thank you. Please also remember that on our International Sathya Sai Educare of South Europe YouTube channel, you can find the recordings of the presentations, which are always made available for those who would like to go through them again. And now it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce our first speaker, Brigitte Kashtan. Brigitte Kashtan is presently living in Israel in a small kibbutz, Hukuk, near the Lake of Tiberias. She was born in Belgium, educated in Belgium, then in France since the age of 10 in Catholic nun schools. After completing her academic studies in Paris, she moved to Israel and lived in Haifa, northern Israel, until a few years ago. Professionally, Brigitte graduated in clinical psychopathology at the Catholic University of Paris, also studying philosophy at the University of Sorbonne. After moving to Israel in 1977, she worked for years in public institutions such as the University of Haifa in psychotherapy and research, and the mental health hospital, in which she completed her training as a senior clinical psychologist and supervising psychotherapy, also serving as the chief psychologist. She has been working privately as a consultant, clinical psychologist, and psychotherapist, specializing in the fields of transpersonal psychology and spiritual thanatology, research on death and after death. She has been lecturing and teaching in Israel in Hebrew in diverse institutions such as universities, colleges, nursing schools, and training programs for school teachers, and also gave talks in other countries in French and English. Some of her talks were published in collective books, such as the one on meditation and psychotherapy, as well as an article entitled The Spiritual Point of View, Spiritual Care of the Dying, in the collective book called Confronting Dying and Death. Brigitte also considers music, and especially singing, as a bridge to higher realms, and published 4 CDs of inspirational music and guided meditations. In all her therapies, talks, and singing, Brigitte's purpose and mission is to help people reconnect to their eternal self and divine essence. On the spiritual plane, Brigitte has been a seeker of eternal wisdom since an early age, and always felt resonance with universal truth common to all religions. After learning from other teachers, such as François Brousse, a French philosopher and metaphysician, she found in Sathya Sai's teachings the universal truth that she had been looking for. Brigitte is also deeply concerned by Mother Earth's present situation and sees Sathya Sai's profound philosophical teachings about the unity of God, nature, and man as the royal way in inspiring a deep personal transformation, as well as a more loving environmental care, so crucial in these present times. She currently serves as the EnviroCare coordinator for South European countries of the Sathya Sai International Organization. Thank you for your attention, and now I invite this wonderful lady to share her knowledge and insights with you. Brigitte, dear, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much, dear Esma, for your so nice presentation. And again, a very warm welcome to all of you, dear participants.
Esma, I say that now comes the time to talk not only about the message of Sathya Sai, education in human values, but about the founder of this program, about the life, work and teachings of Sathya Sai, who is called by many as well Sathya Sai Baba or Sri Sathya Sai Baba. Many of you already know a lot about these topics, some of you do not. So we'll talk about Sathya Sai Baba's work, first of all his life, who is Sathya Sai, about his purpose and mission, his life, his universal teachings, not only in education but in other fields as well, about his work and accomplishments, and we'll talk about the activities that he has been inspiring around the world and until today. So we'll start by talking about who is Sathya Sai. Sathya Sai, Sathya Sai Baba, was born in 1926 and he lived until 2011. He is a highly revered spiritual leader and world teacher. He has inspired millions of people through the world to realize our true divine nature and to lead more spiritual, purposeful, and moral lives. His universal teachings have been attracting seekers of truth from all the walks of life. He is considered by millions as one of the greatest spiritual teachers of all time. Sathya Sai Baba is viewed by different people in different ways. To a rationalist, he may be considered as a great humanitarian. We'll see later why. To thousands of people, he is considered as an inspiring leader with a dynamic vision. To a spiritual aspirant and seeker, he is seen as a spiritual master, teacher. And to his followers, he is simply pure love in human form. We'll see all these in detail in a minute. So as you can see on the map here, Sathya Sai Baba was born and spent his entire life in Puttaparthi, which is a very small village in South India in the state of Andhra Pradesh. He did not belong to any religion and did not propagate any. As a human being, he led by example and said repeatedly, "My life is my message." He spent his entire life in compassionate activities for the upliftment of humanity. He demonstrated again and again that a spiritual life does not mean living in seclusion somewhere in a cave or a monastery or in the forest, but a true spiritual life is a full and dedicated life rendering service to all, loving service to all, loving all, serving all. All his actions, whether big or small, were founded on his pure, selfless, unconditional, and eternal love. At a human level, Sathya Sai has set an example of an ideal, fully integrated, loving, and selfless human being. He showed humanity the royal path to realize one's divine nature, respecting the universal spiritual teachings common to all religions. The selfless and pure love shown naturally and spontaneously by Sathya Sai Baba attracted thousands of people daily from all parts of the world. And his greatest miracle, recognized by his followers, is the transformation of human heart, and we'll see later what that means. His name was, as we say, Satyanarayana Raju. He was born on the 23rd of November 1926. Here we see the river that is crossing the village Puttaparthi, on the bank of which Sathya Sai as a child, Satyanarayana as he was called, or Satya as a child, spent many evenings, playing in the sands there. And here is the photo of his parents. He comes from a very simple family, rural family. His parents were very pious people. His mother was a very compassionate lady who was also, even they were poor and living in such a small house with little food and little clothes. She would cook food also for the other children in the village and distribute it from the money that her husband would give her. So he was born and raised in that atmosphere. He is the fourth of 5 children. He had an elder brother, 2 sisters, and then a younger brother was born later. So he spent his childhood there, in that simple, very small village. He used to go to school, like all his playmates and friends, for many kilometers every day, because there was no school in that village. And from a very young age, he showed qualities of compassion and selfless love. Even as his mother was so compassionate, she was sometimes upset herself, as Satyanarayana would give his food and clothes, the little that there was, to beggars and didn't keep for himself. So he was known for that compassion and love. He was very gifted for many things, for singing, for dancing. As we know that the local arts then, with no television or internet, of course, at these times, but the art and culture was to know, like his parents, his father and grandfather knew so well all the scriptures and all the stories of the Hindu mythology and religion. And they were told that in plays and theater plays from village to village. And Satya, as a young boy, created a group of devotional singing with his friends, and they would go from village to sing. He would also compose some of these songs and write some of these plays. And at school, he was an ideal student with a very special, extraordinary spiritual wisdom. He was loved by his playmates, by his friends, and by the teachers as well. When he was almost 14, on the 20th of October 1940, everything changed, and he made a historic declaration. He told his family he went to school on that day with his books and his bag, and then he came back before time, and he threw his bag and the books at the door of the home. He was then living with his elder brother, who was hoping to make of him a clerk in the administration, which was considered to be a very good job. And he was hoping that his younger brother, Satyanarayana, would become the sustainer of the whole family, because he was so brilliant and gifted. But instead, on that day, Satya threw his books and he said, I cannot go on like this. We'll see later how he explained. He said that he has a mission. He came to this world with a mission to re-establish the principle of righteousness, dharma, to motivate love for God and service to fellow men. And indeed, from that day on, followers would come and see him, and he would teach them, and the number of followers grew and grew. And 7 years later, he was already well known by many people. And his elder brother, again, was quite concerned because he was invited to the house of many people, even, you know, queens and kings of that time. And so his elder brother was a bit concerned. And then Sathya Sai wrote to him a very beautiful letter. And here are 3 sentences of this letter that explain further about his task and mission. He wrote like that: I have a task to foster all mankind and ensure for all of them lives full of bliss. I have a vow to lead all who stray away from the right path again into goodness and save them. I am attached to a work that I love, to remove the sufferings of the poor and grant them what they lack. So we see it's quite a mission, quite a task, quite a vow, quite a work. And indeed, he did that. When he wrote that, he was just 20 years old. And until the age of 86, that's exactly what he did. So Sathya Sai did not come to start a new religion. While recognizing the validity of all religious traditions, his mission goes beyond all religions and helps one realize our innate divinity, latent in every human being. In fact, in every being, although non-human as well. His mission was to give us full faith in the divine source that resides within. And this, indeed, ensured that the 5 human values are preserved and nurtured in everyone, in human relationship and towards animals and towards nature as well. So we'll see a few more quotes, 2 more quotes that define further in Sathya Sai's word his purpose and mission. Here is a quote that clearly reflects his mission, which is indeed to benefit the whole of humanity. A very beautiful quote. I have come to light the lamp of love in your hearts, to see that it shines day by day with added luster. I have not come to speak on behalf of any particular religion. I have not come on any mission of publicity for any sect or creed or cause, nor have I come to collect followers for any doctrine. I have no plan to attract disciples or devotees into my fold or any fold. I have come to tell you about this unitary faith, this divine principle, this path of love, this duty of love, this obligation to love. So we see the word love here, and we heard in Raksha's presentation about the value of love, which kind of love he was talking about. Very important. In the next slide, we see that Sathya Sai describes himself as love itself, and as his task being in the same line as all the great teachers of truth who have come to help mankind. He also wrote, you will learn that I am love itself, that I give only one thing, bliss through love. My task is to distribute solace, courage, and peace. That is to say, my characteristics are the ancient, authentic ones. Only the manifested form is new. Again, Sathya Sai said that all the great teachers of truth came along the ages to bring the same message of love all, serve all, like Rama, Krishna, Buddha, or the other great teachers. Only his form was new, of course. So through his discourses and writings, Sathya Sai Baba has offered an ocean of wisdom and guidance on all aspects of spirituality and value-oriented living. He wrote many writings that were put together into books, many articles, and he gave thousands and thousands of discourses. His universal teachings are characterized by their great simplicity, yet profound depth. He used a lot of parables, like Jesus also used to use a lot, also for people who are illiterate. So lots of examples, lots of metaphors that were very helpful in explaining very deep principles. And for the more for people who are inclined to deep knowledge, he also provided these very deep pieces of knowledge. He has often repeated that it is not necessary to read all the scriptures to live a life of joy, peace, and love. It is enough to put into practice at least one teaching. His emphasis has always been on the practical aspect rather than mere theory. And then we'll see his universal teachings, not only in the field of education, as we have been learning until now, but the more universal teachings. Here are the 5 main points or pillars of his teaching. Firstly, and most importantly, Sathya Sai Baba encourages us to recognize and manifest who we really are. He reminds us that we are not just the body or the mind. As the Greek philosopher Socrates taught, similarly, Sathya Sai invites us to constantly ask ourselves, who am I? To activate our inner vision in order to realize our true nature and essence, which is universal love, the eternal, changeless spirit, our true selves. And we learned this during the lesson given by George about truth in detail and in depth, with a quote saying that true education is that which is related to you and helps you realize the true meaning of I. We see this beautiful photo of the iceberg. We know usually before we start this quest only the top of the iceberg, when there is so much inside, all the human values and our eternal essence, as we learned. Sathya Sai also wrote that names and forms may be different, but all beings are part and parcel of the same divine principle. The second main point of Sathya Sai universal teachings relates to human values, and these we already learned in depth. So we know what they are. We learned that the human values of truth, righteousness, peace, love, and non-violence are latent in every human being. Educare means to bring them out and translate them into action. The next point, the next stepping stone, is the principle of unity. So we already talked about the first aspect of unity. Sathya Sai has highlighted the importance of unity in many of his teachings. In his discourses, he has repeatedly spoken to us about the unity of head, heart, and hands. This was already explained also in the previous lessons, and Raksha will talk about it again in this session during the workshop. So we'll talk more about the other ones that haven't been talked about yet, which is the unity of faith, unity in diversity, and later we'll talk also about the unity of God, nature, and man when we talk about the environment. About the unity of faith, there is a beautiful quote as well, and also the next one you will see. Let the different faith exist. Respect the differences between faiths and recognize them as valid as long as they do not extinguish the flame of unity. This is very important. We know that all the founders of religions, all the great spiritual teachers, always brought a very pure message that was adapted to the time and place in which they were born. But unfortunately, we know that later some of their followers or disciples distorted the message, which is why until today, unfortunately, there are wars that are done in the name of religion because of these distortions. But if the original message of the founder of faith was followed, there would be peace in the whole world, because that's what they all taught. So we'll talk more about unity. Here is again a very meaningful quote saying that there is only one religion, the religion of love. There is only one race, the race of humanity. There is only one language, the language of the heart. There is only one God, and He is omnipresent. These beautiful quotes, this one and the previous one, really summarize all the message that Sathya Sai told us again and again. Beautiful message. One religion, the religion of love. One race, the race of humanity. One language, the language of the heart. And one God that is omnipresent, that exists in everyone and in everything, in all living beings, not only human. The next point, main point or pillar in Sathya Sai's teaching is the one talking on sealing on desires. We see here that very funny drawing, caricature, that says that when we have too much luggage, which means too many desires, it's heavy and it's difficult. Sathya Sai used to tell us, travel light, don't be attached to so many things. And we know that with the aim of uplifting human consciousness, Sathya Sai Baba has advised us on the danger of having excessive, limitless desires. These desires emerge due to identifying ourselves mistakenly with the body and the mind, forgetting our true nature. And we know that our modern civilization, unfortunately in the West especially, has been creating desires. All these advertisements and the society of consummation are made to make people buy things that they don't really need, and to believe that if they buy these things or acquire them, they will be happier. Of course, we know many examples of very rich people, very famous people who had all these desires accomplished in a way, and that were very miserable and even committed suicide or went into drugs and alcohol, etc. So Sathya Sai tells us that it's an invitation. He stressed the need to stop wasting food. He said, do not waste food, do not waste money, do not waste time, do not waste energy. It's a very powerful program that he offered us. Beside the program of human values, this is the second very important program. Sathya Sai said that it is very dangerous to not place a limit on our desires. He said, you will destroy your mind if it has uncontrolled desires. And we all know, of course, what it is to waste food, to waste money, to waste time and energy. And this program is really, can be a revelation when we come to know it. How to put a ceiling on food, money, time and energy. For instance, he said that talking is wasting energy when we talk too much. Time, of course, we all know, I guess, what it is to waste time. About money, we all know, sometimes from first source or second or third source, from close ones, what it is when people spend too much money on things that they cannot afford because they have been tempted by some advertisement or somebody else who has that. But again, what is important is to understand the principle of identification. As long as we identify with our desires, with our body, with our mind, it is endless pursuit of things that never can give us true happiness. And that is the meaning of this program and the Human Values program, to teach us who we really are. We'll see that. The next pillar in Sathya Sai teaching is the very beautiful one that says, love all, serve all. That means everything. We know that this quote, that is very, very inspiring as well. Sathya Sai said, do not limit divinity in a small frame. Make your love expand. Realize all living beings are divine. All living beings, not only human. If you develop love, you will not need to develop anything else. Therefore, love all and serve all. This is also the theme of the organization to which he gave his name. We'll see that later. So, indeed, Sathya Sai's life was totally dedicated to selfless service. He has demonstrated how to render selfless service through his own personal example. And he really demonstrated what it means to love all and serve all. Here we see him, as he did many times, distributing food himself to the poor. And until now, his followers are very inspired to go on with this task. And we know, like for COVID, for instance, or before, followers, volunteers have been distributing basic needs to people. As mentioned before, Sathya Sai spent his entire life in compassionate activities for the upliftment of mankind. He demonstrated that a spiritual life is one that is fully dedicated in rendering loving service to all. Sathya Sai Baba has repeatedly said that the highest spiritual discipline is selfless service, that hands that serve are holier than lips that pray. He also reminded us that selfless service is love in action, and that in fact we are not actually serving others, but we are serving ourselves, serving the same divinity and essence that resides in every living being. So, unconditional love and selfless service are the very foundation of Sathya Sai Baba's message and teachings. And he has repeatedly said that education, healthcare, and taking care of basic primary needs are primordial human rights and indispensable things that society must offer freely to all its members without any restriction due to caste, status, nationality, religion, or gender. And through his example in infinite love, Sathya Sai has touched thousands of hearts and more around the world and has inspired thousands of initiatives under the framework of educare, medicare, and social care. We'll talk also about envirocare. If we could please see the next slide. We'll see that actually this is Sathya Sai's mother, Ishvarama, and Sathya Sai used to say that she came to him and she asked him to build a school, a small school for children in Puttaparthi, after she saw children carrying these heavy books and having to walk kilometers as her own children had to do. But she, because of her, thanks to her compassionate heart, she wanted to help these children. Her heart was touched by these children having to carry these heavy books for many kilometers each day to go to school. So she asked her son, Sathya Sai Baba, please build a small school for children in Puttaparthi, in the village itself, so that they don't have to travel so much. And then she saw a lady who was sick. And again, it was very difficult in these times to travel to that village or the town where there was some medical care. So she asked him, could you please build a small clinic in the village itself? And then again, she saw ladies carrying these heavy jars of water each day. And she asked, could you please dig a well in the village? And indeed, he did this, Sathya Sai did this. And as he said that expansion is his life, and his life is his message, so from this small school and this small clinic and this small well in the village, he expanded this project to these three fields of educare, medicare, and social care. So we talked a lot about educare already, and Raksha will tell you later also about the development of the educare in the whole world. We know that education, as Sathya Sai said, should not be just information, but transformation. That is what is the main point in educare. We'll see again later what Raksha tells us about these. So we'll talk more about the next point, which are medicare. You see here one of the beautiful hospitals built by Sathya Sai at his inspiration in the village itself, outside of the village Puttaparthi. Then he had another one built near Bangalore in Vrindavan. You know that in India, people have to pay a lot of money for schools and for medical care. So of course, Sathya Sai provided all these totally free of charge. And what is important to know also is that these hospitals are in fact temples of healing. If you see this hospital, the middle part there, when you enter, it is actually a temple. The whole entrance hall is a temple with statues and paintings of the different aspects of divinity or spiritual teachers that people follow. So there are statues of all the divinities, deities in India and also others like Buddha, Jesus, other ones, so that every patient and their families, when they enter this temple of healing, first of all, they come into this hall and they pray to the divinity that they chose for themselves. Of course, those who are not religious can just connect with their higher self if they prefer. And motivated by Sathya Sai Baba's teaching to serve humanity, doctors, nurses, and volunteers from all parts of the world go on serving by rendering extraordinary, compassionate, and loving care to patients and those in need around the world. There were many medical conferences organized by Sathya Sai in the ashram, in Puttaparthi itself, and in other places in the world. And he kept reminding doctors, in fact, and others of Hippocrates, what the first doctor in Western world said, you know, the Hippocrates oath should be, which is to treat people freely and not to look for gain. But unfortunately, as we know, many doctors and others see the gain first of all. So Sathya Sai has been reminding them of their sacred mission. He told them, it is your good fortune that you have become doctors. Sacrifice is the hallmark of a true doctor. So doctors should be compassionate and have the spirit of sacrifice. And through a huge network of medical camps and clinics, volunteers that are inspired by Sathya Sai's message serve hundreds of thousands of needy patients every year at hundreds of medical camps, permanent medical clinics and mobile clinics. It is absolutely amazing network that is in the whole world and inside India as well. Each year, hundreds of thousands are seen by doctors free of charge, also in Sathya Sai mobile clinics. Also in these times of COVID, and that last year, it went on at all levels by doctors, nurses, and also people, for instance, ladies who knew how to sew, so they would sew thousands of masks and distribute them everywhere. And also in Africa, a huge project was done, taking care of people and also their basic needs, that providing them food, first of all, and water, as we'll see. Water projects are very important. So we'll see that the next field of activity is social care, very, very important. Here we see again Sathya Sai himself serving food, inspiring his followers and his students to do the same. And until today, followers and students are serving food as much as possible to people who need it, because this is a basic need. Service activities are a very important function of his followers, followed by his followers and volunteers. Selfless service is a spiritual discipline for the realization of the divine principle latent in every being. Selfless service should be carried out regularly and become actually a way of life. It is love in action, love for the planet, that we'll see in a minute, and in particular, love for our fellow beings. It consists of taking care of the physical, psychological, and spiritual well-being of the needy without any consideration for reward or proselytizing. Sathya Sai always said that selfless service is the highest spiritual discipline. Here in the middle photo, in the right one, we see one of the most important projects undertaken by Sathya Sai himself, and that is going on in the whole world. It is to provide pure water. This is a very basic need, and unfortunately, pure water is becoming more and more scarce on the planet. And yesterday night, we even received a report from the environmental people in the organization by followers and volunteers. And in Sri Lanka, for instance, they have this huge water project. So until yesterday, when the report was sent, and today, followers of this message are still making huge efforts to provide pure water. It's happening in Nepal, it's happening in Sri Lanka, it's happening in Africa. We know people here who took care to dig a well somewhere in Africa, and then a school was created. So all the time, this inspiration is going on. And after Sathya Sai started this huge project of building all these canals and huge pipes to bring water to remote villages in the south of India, it was handed over to the state of Andhra Pradesh. What the state should have done, Sathya Sai done it because he felt in his compassion the suffering of people who didn't have water. The inherent benefits derived from service go beyond all limits. Service purifies the heart, it strengthens the spirit, it puts an end to personal interest and ennobles our perspective. It demonstrates that unity is the very essence of human nature. Volunteers who follow Sathya Sai's message also provide humanitarian assistance and disaster relief to victims of natural disaster around the world. And now we'll see another field of service that concerns the environment, because the question is, do we experience love for all life forms just as we do for humans? And Sathya Sai actually talked about what we call now ecology, concern and care for Mother Earth, for nature, already in the 60s, when very few people would talk about it. Sathya Sai told us that the expression of the divine love should not be confined to human beings, but should be extended to all beings, because there is that concept of divinity being immanent in every living being, also the trees, the animals, the stars, the whole universe. And we'll see in this following slide posters that were made by people in the organization who take care of this field. So you see the first slide on the left says exactly this: the universe is the body of God. Every particle in it is filled with God, His glory, His might, His inscrutability. And this is the difference between that message offered to us by Sathya Sai and many very wonderful projects of ecology that go on in the world. Everything is important, but Sathya Sai gave us the deep message behind this teaching, to understand that air, water, the earth, all the elements are filled with divinity. So the primary task, he said, is to purify the environment, which, as we know, is affected by pollution of air, water, and food. And even when we sing sacred songs or listen to sacred music, we purify the atmosphere. So we have the responsibility to clean, to purify the pollution in our own minds and in our hearts. And these influences our environment, first of all, our close environment, and like ripples, we know that every thought and every feeling influences the whole universe. We know that many natural catastrophes are entirely due to man's behavior. And at the beginning of this COVID pandemic, we know that many people were conscious of that. That actually what happened with the COVID, one of the explanations could be that Mother Earth was revolting, has been revolting against all what man did to her, well, exploiting its resource, not putting a ceiling on our desires, because we consummate too much. So human life will find fulfillment when ecological balance is maintained. And we'll see that quote saying that all are one, be alike to everyone. Again, the message of unity at the cosmic level. In the next slide, we'll see activities done all the time by volunteers that follow this message. It's very simple, like cleaning up forests, etc., planting, gardening, helping elder people to garden, work for values also in this field to raise awareness. And then we'll see a poster made also by volunteers that take care of this part, saying that pure and unselfish love towards all living beings, considered as embodiments of the divine, with no expectation of reward, is true love. In our relationship with nature, let us first redefine who we are, as we saw before. We are spiritual beings seeking self-realization and bliss through love and unity with all creation. And with this inner realization, we recognize the inherent divinity in nature. And we are coming close to the end of this presentation. We'll talk now about the organization that was inspired and founded by Sathya Sai. He lent his name to this organization, which is called the Sri Sathya Sai International Organization, or SSSIO. We see here the 5 human values with the pillar of truth shining through all the values. The Sri Sathya Sai International Organization is a spiritual and humanitarian organization. It has been active for over 50 years, carrying out its mission of enabling its members, and indeed everyone, any spiritual aspirant, to realize the divine principle innate in every human being. It neither belongs to any single religion, doesn't preach any, as we saw. It encompasses all the religions, all faith and all nationalities. Also for spiritual seekers that do not consider themselves religious. It has now over 2,000 Sri Sathya Sai centers in over 120 countries over the world, and they all support educational, spiritual, and selfless service activities for realization of one's own true nature. All are totally free of charge. So we'll see what is the purpose of this organization. Its purpose is to help man recognize the divinity that is inherent in him. So, said Sathya Sai, your duty is to emphasize the One, to experience the One in all you do or speak. Do not give any importance to differences of religion or sect or status or color. Have the feeling of oneness permeate every act of yours. And we come now to the last slide of this presentation, because Sathya Sai's message is be happy. But be happy because we implement all these teachings, all what you said. If we deeply, of what we said until now, in all the sessions until now, because if we deeply understand, practice and experience this message of unity with all that is, no negative feelings or thoughts will be left, only love and bliss. Inner happiness that does not depend on anyone or anything, and love that only expands to more and more people, more and more living beings. Sathya Sai Baba's life was his message. By living his message and putting his teaching into practice, we can get transformed and help the world around us to transform by our living example. And here is a last quote before ending this presentation. Sathya Sai told us that at the end of your life, when you look back in time, the only thing that will really matter is how much love you shared with all creation in every moment of your life. Thank you for your attention. Esma, I give you back the mic.
Thank you, dear Brigitte, for this beautiful and inspiring presentation. You made me cry, really. Thank you for reminding us on the profoundness of Sri Sathya Sai Baba's teachings and greatness of his love and compassion. Thank you. You made me feel deeply moved and speechless. Now we are going to have a short break of 5 minutes. See you in 5 minutes. Welcome back again, dear participants. Now we can continue with the second part of today's session, which is a short presentation of the history of Sathya Sai education in human values, followed immediately by a workshop on leadership. The presenter this time is Raksha Mahtani. You have already had the honor to listen to. Therefore, I will not introduce Raksha in detail, sorry. But what I cannot miss to say is that Raksha is passionate about education and human values and has dedicated most of her professional life to implement an education model that promotes human excellence, inspired by and based on the philosophy and methodology of Sathya Sai Educare. Sorry. Raksha has been a teacher, trainer, and faculty member of the Institute of Sathya Sai Education of South Europe since the year 29 and has participated in Sathya Sai Education human values training programs conducted in Spain as well as other European countries. Currently, she works in the British international school called Green Valley School in Palma de Mallorca, Spain, where she teaches weekly human values lessons to all the primary and secondary students. She's also the Education and Human Values and Character Building Director at the school, taking care of the social, emotional well-being of every child. So, dear Raksha, I invite you to inspire us again, as you always do. Here you are.
Thank you once again, dear Esma, for your warm welcome. Good morning to everyone. And as Esma said, today we have a very special topic. We will be talking about the history of Sathya Sai education in human values. And as Esma also reminded us, last time we had this beautiful opportunity of listening and hearing from Brigitte about the life, the work, and the teachings of the founder of this program, Sri Sathya Sai. And you know, as we see from this image here, we always refer also to this lotus flower, how it grows, how it's part of the world, you know, but still, even though, you know, educare is all about bringing out, it's all about being here. And even though sometimes we are faced with difficult and challenging situations, this lotus flower grows in such a beautiful way, bringing out its inner beauty and showing it and reflecting it. So this is what this program is about. And the founder himself reflected this beauty, this goodness, this truth. And this is like a continuation to what we saw last time. And as you know, Sathya Sai Education in Human Values is based on the philosophy of educare with this double Latin root. And we always talk a lot about educare, which is to bring out, to elicit, to manifest all these human values, to put them into action, but also the aspect of educare, which is to nourish, to protect. So again, we have these flowers, which represent this blossoming, this bringing out from within, and manifesting the inner beauty as well. And this program, today's session is very special in the sense that some of us may be more familiar, but maybe some of us, you know, it's lovely to know about the foundations, the roots of this program, how it started, even though we heard about the life of its founder. And, you know, we have touched upon various aspects of Sathya Sai education. It would be nice today to focus especially on when it started, how it started, and to do this, we're going to go through a timeline of some milestones and some important events that mark this, the blossoming of this program as well. So as I said, again, you see, we always focus on these images related to nature, to agriculture, to cultivating, to bringing out. And let us take a good deep look now at the beginning of SSEHV. So to do this, we will aid ourselves with a timeline, because sometimes, you know, at least for me, even while preparing this presentation, the first time when I had to prepare this for our first online course in 2021, I remember that there were many things that I found out myself that I was not aware of. And as we know, SSEHV is a universal program. It's universal, it's common to all, irrespective of whether, you know, we follow Sathya Sai's message. For many of us, he is our spiritual master too, but so many people around the world have been inspired, our communities, by his teachings, by his message. So let us start at, and our focus is going to be, of course, on Sathya Sai, but in this case, everything that he has done in the field of education. So everything that we will see in this timeline is related to education as such, to SSEHV. So the first date that we are going to start with is 1968. And this is when the Sri Sathya Sai Arts and Science College for Women was established in Anantapur, India. This is very meaningful because the first institution, the first educational institution that Sathya Sai gave his name to is actually a college for women. And we can say that, you know, we have seen this in society, in our own societies, how every time we talk more about, you know, these equal rights and for women to also have access to everything. And in this sense, we have to say that Sathya Sai has always been a pioneer as well. And it's very meaningful to know that the first institution that, the educational institution he set up was for women, and that bears his name. And it was this Arts and Science College in Anantapur in India. Then in 1969, 1 year later, the Bal Vikas program was established in India. And on the next slide, we will see what exactly these two terms Bal Vikas refer to. So that happened. So it started, we can say that the roots of Sathya Sai Education in Human Values, its beginnings were from 1968, then 1969 with this Bal Vikas program. And already in the early 1970s, the first Sathya Sai schools were established in India. So this happened in the early 1970s. And at the same time, the first country outside India that started being inspired by education and human values, more concretely the Bal Vikas program, was in the UK. So the UK was the first country outside India to actually implement and be inspired by this program. And in 1971, the first conference in Prashanti Nilayam took place in India to train national Bal Vikas teachers. So as many of you know, Prashanti Nilayam is in Puttaparthi. It's the place where Sathya Sai Baba had his ashram, where, you know, people went there to be inspired by his message on a pilgrimage to this inner introspection journey. And Prashanti Nilayam actually means the abode of supreme peace. So many events have taken place in Prashanti Nilayam, and the first conference for Bal Vikas teachers to train them was in 1971, as we see here. And then also in 1997, by that time, the Bal Vikas program had also started in the USA. So it's nice to see, as we will see, Sathya Sai Baba always said, expansion is my life. So we will see how from the late 1960s all the way up to now, how this message of education has really expanded, spreading the light of human values more and more year by year. So just to go back to some of the terms we mentioned, like Bal Vikas, but first let's look at these inspiring images. You can see Sathya Sai interacting with younger students. He was always so active in the educational institutions, in the work of the Sri Sathya Sai International Organization. And as we see here, the terms Bal Vikas actually means blossoming of the child. Bal means child, and Vikas means blossoming. So what a beautiful term. Again, going back to that image of the flowers, of the seed that exactly, you know, blossoms and turns into beautiful flowers, trees, plants. So here we have, yes, his teachings are the ones that have inspired this program. Nowadays, we refer to Bal Vikas as Sai spiritual education, but it initially started off with this term Bal Vikas. And by 1975, the number of trained Bal Vikas teachers in India had grown to about 3,500, and the number of students to over 50,000. So you can see this was rapidly expanding already. And then we will see, as we go through this presentation, that in the late 70s and 80s, the program also began to rapidly expand and spread to other countries around the world. So moving on and continuing with this timeline, we can see here that in 1981, there was the first conference in Prashanti Nilayam, but this time it was for international teachers, so it was for overseas. And it was the first time that they actually introduced this term Sathya Sai Education in Human Values, which is what we refer to now as SSEHV. So it was in 1981 that this program, from Bal Vikas developed into a more structured Sathya Sai education in human values program inspired through the founder's teachings, of course. And also in the same year, the SSEHV program started in the UK. So once again, we saw this before, that even Bal Vikas, it started in India and then UK immediately. This is also the same. So the UK has been a pioneer in that sense around the world to also start education in human values based on Sathya Sai's teachings. Then in 1983 was the 15th anniversary celebration of the Bal Vikas program that was held in Prashanti Nilayam, India. And during the same year, an Education in Human Values Foundation was established in the USA. And it developed the first official SSEHV curriculum, and it incorporated a lesson plan model. You have heard us talk many times about the 5 teaching techniques, although it will be in module 2 when we will go through each one of them more in depth. But we have spoken a lot about storytelling, about silent sitting or meditation on the light, about group singing, about group activities, and all of that, and quotations, the use of quotations and prayers. So all of these 5 teaching techniques, this lesson plan model, incorporating these techniques in lessons based on Sathya Sai's deep teachings on education. It was in the USA when they first established a program as such and a foundation for human values. So this is all, at least for me, and I'm sure for all of you, it's so inspiring to see how, like again, going back to nature, how this blossoms and how this spreads and how it inspires and touches thousands of hearts. So again, some nice photographs from a few years ago. So Sathya Sai Baba presenting awards to his Bal Vikas students so beautifully. And also the 15th anniversary celebration of the Bal Vikas program held in Prashanti Nilayam, which we mentioned before. So again, as we can see, he, as an exemplary leader, he interacted and participated so much in guiding all of these educational institutions that bear his name, in helping develop, all these programs around the world with his guidance, with his inspiration. And always, it's again coming back to this image of bringing out from within and blossoming and cultivating. So here we have a very inspiring quote from the founder, because he reminds us that you must take back the seed of Sathya Sai Education in Human Values, the program, and plant it into the soil of your country, so that an SSEHV tree may sprout and flourish in full respect of its law and culture. Here, Sathya Sai is reminding us that SSEHV, like we said before, it's a universal program. And what does universal mean? It's common to all. It can be applied in any context. It's a spiritual program. So in that sense, the essence of SSEHV can be adapted, of course, but as long as we are loyal to its essence, and we're faithful to its deep roots of bringing out from within this deep latent connection with human values, it's always important to adapt these teachings, to adapt the methodologies we use and everything in the countries, and respecting the culture of the country too. But like we said, always without moving from the essence, the deep essence of this wonderful spiritual program. So again, so many things going on since then. And we will now also see further that in 1985, the first SSEHV workshop in India was conducted for 300 schools in the country. So it was attended by principals and directors of 300 schools in India. So this was the first time in 1985 that actually a conference was held for not just Sathya Sai schools and teachers who work in Sathya Sai schools, but for schools around the country who then really adopted and got inspired by the philosophy and methodology of Sathya Sai education in human values. And then a milestone, very key date here for us, especially in Europe, and actually also around the world, because the first European Sathya Sai Institute was established in Denmark, and it took care of training teachers throughout Europe. And when I said it was the first institute in Europe, it's also the first institute around the world. We will see later what the exact role of the institutes are. As we know, this is the Institute of Sathya Sai Education of South Europe that we belong to right now, and that this course is being conducted on behalf of the Institute. But the first one was and SE stands for European Sathya Sai Institute. We many times refer to it as the North European Institute. And you have heard, we have had the privilege to hear Marianne Meyer, who presented the value of peace when we covered it. And Marianne and her late husband, Thorbjørn Meyer, they have been pioneers in Sathya Sai education, not just in Europe, but also around the world. And many of us were very fortunate to be inspired still by Marianne, but many of our members, especially the ISSE training team members, I've heard, I didn't meet Thorbjørn myself, I didn't have that honor, but I've heard still so many stories and inspiring anecdotes about his work and along with Marianne. So we see human values and people who practice them truly remain as a perennial source of inspiration. So this is a very key milestone date, as we said. And then throughout the 1980s is when we could say that SSEHV conferences, workshops started taking place all around the world. And it practically reached every single continent. So it was not only in the US, as we saw, or in UK, it actually spread all around the world in the early 1980s. And like I said, in every continent, it was, through the Sri Sathya Sai International Organization and its programs and everything, people started getting to know more and more about SSEHV. So let us just see some nice pictures of when the ESSE, the European Sathya Sai Education Institute, the North European one, was founded in 1987. So right on the, I'm not so good with my left and right, sorry, the left, yes, on the left side of the image, the first person we see, this is Thorbjørn Meyer. So yes, we have this wonderful photograph, and the next one too, which is the first European conference on SSEHV, which took place in Denmark in 1987. So here we can already see many people gathered, talking about Sathya Sai education and human values, going through training seminars and all of that. And here, just for us to enjoy, we have images of, Sathya Sai education and human values programs through the schools, through the communities all around the world, as we see in the USA, in Ecuador, in the UK, in Australia, Greece. That is actually an image of Sai Prema, who many of us have had the fortune to go to, and where lots of events of the Sri Sathya Sai International Organization and of our institute take place when we have our in-person meetings too. So there we can see the main hall of Sai Prema in Greece, also Argentina, China, Brazil, and Panama. So as we see, lots and tons of hearts being benefited and touched by this inspirational spiritual educational program. And again, moving on ahead in this line of the Sathya Sai Education Human Values Program, it was back in 1997 when Sathya Sai Baba, the founder, as we know, when at least in our references, when we look through his discourses, this is the first time that he actually makes mention to the term educere, right? And he refers to this Latin root. We will now see an extract of what he said in 1997. So he says, the term education is derived from the Latin term educere, which means drawing out. The idea is to draw out what is latent. Acquisition of knowledge is a worldly aspect, but what has to be known is the divine feelings present in the human heart. In addition to earning a living, one has to understand the purpose of life. Both these aspects are essential as the two eyes for a person. So here we see the term educere. We have written it with E because Sathya Sai talks about drawing out. And as we saw with the two Latin roots, educere refers to this aspect of bringing out, eliciting, whereas educare, written with an A, refers to nourishing, to protecting. So even though in some texts we might see it written with A, the correct way to write it would actually be educere with an E here, because of what Swami, again, Swami, our beloved teacher, is actually referring to drawing out. And just 1 year later, he also, this wonderful quotation, as he says, the word vidya has its origin in the Sanskrit root vid, meaning wisdom, effulgence, and bliss. The equivalent term for vidya in English is education. Education is derived from educere, meaning to bring out or to elicit. It refers to manifesting that which is latent in man. Sacred qualities like compassion, love, patience, truth, righteousness, and justice originate from the heart. Educere means manifesting these latent qualities in man. So again, this reference to this term, to bringing out, to eliciting, to manifesting these latent qualities and human values. Another quote from Sathya Sai in 1998. So moving on, in 2007, there was something called the European Regional Consultation, which took place in London, and its aim was to standardize SSEHV training. So at this point, we will later also see the role of the Sathya Sai institutes around the world, but because Sathya Sai education was present in all the continents, and lots of different training programs were going on, like this one, for example, this online training course. Many times it has been conducted in person. Most of the times, it was actually very recently that online trainings have started, but most of the times these in-person training programs, as you can imagine, different countries would be doing them in different ways, following a different curriculum, different topics. So in 2007, it was very meaningful to have this consultation because the SSEHV program, in terms of its training to teachers as well, was standardized. So right now, for example, the topics that we follow in course 1, module 1, and then we will do module 2 and module 3, whether we belong or we're doing it through the Institute of South Europe, or whether it's through the Institute of Argentina or anywhere else around the world, the program, the curriculum, the topics as such have been standardized. So this helps us also somehow, refer to the same things and to really work in unison in that sense. And then in 2009, another very key milestone date is that the Institute of Sathya Sai Education here in South Europe was established. So our dear George Vasiliki is the most senior of our faculty members of the ISSE-SE, so the South European one, and George, of course, immediately after. And both of them, they were active, especially Vasiliki from the start, in the ESSE, in the North European Institute. But because there was a greater need for training and more and more countries were asking for this, there was this need to also create another European institute, this time the South European one, just to offer these programs and to be able to meet the needs of all the educators and people who were interested. And here we are in the second round of online course 1. But as you know, the first training of this program, online course 1 in South Europe, of the SSEHV program started in 2021. So after the successful training, this is why we are offering the training this second time now, the second round for new participants. And this happened actually during the time when it was COVID times, where people were, constrained in their houses. And like we always know, in moments of what they so-called crisis or challenging moments, they also develop beautiful opportunities. And we really took advantage of this opportunity to get together different educators from all around Europe. I mean, this team of trainers who are together, we knew each other, but we didn't work so closely together until 2021 to put together this online program for the first time. So it's also very meaningful and beautiful for us to remember this date. And just to have a more formal overview of Sathya Sai education and its system, as we know, it's based on the philosophy of Sathya Sai Educare. And we have these two terms, formal education and non-formal. When we talk about, in this case, formal education, we refer to SSEHV taking place in Sathya Sai schools, in state and private schools, in Sathya Sai colleges, in the Sri Sathya Sai University, which we will see later, and the work carried out by the Institute of Sathya Sai Educations. So we will see later that these Sathya Sai schools, for example, and the Sathya Sai institutes are actually under the umbrella of the Sri Sathya Sai International Organization, which oversees its work and guides its work too. And this is all part of formal education, because as we see, you know, this is again applying the program in a more formal way within the school context, but also through the trainings, in this case, of the Institutes of Sathya Sai Education. But we also have non-formal education, which is, for example, this term Bal Vikas or Sai spiritual education, which is based on the teachings of Sathya Sai, but it's more for people who within the Sathya Sai centers around the world. So, you know, people who follow Sathya Sai's teachings, and also they want to offer this education for their children to learn more about his teachings, but also him as the founder and as a spiritual master too. So we have that, but we also have SSEHV programs in the community. So maybe it's not in a school context, but it's a nice program that takes place as an, you know, in the community, or even as an after-school activity and things like that. We also have SSEHV programs for teenagers and young adults in many countries around the world. In Malaysia, for example, they have a lot of programs that they offer to teenagers. You know, even it's really massive in the sense that thousands of teenagers benefit from these teachings too. And then we also have something called Sathya Sai Parenting, which is programs and training for parents. Because as we know, in the child's education, the two pillars are home, that is the parents especially, and the school, of course, the educators at school. So talking about Sathya Sai schools, as we said, the Sathya Sai schools, there are actually 39 Sathya Sai schools around the world. And these 39 schools, they are guided and inspired by the Education Committee of the Sri Sathya Sai International Organization. As we mentioned before, the Sri Sathya Sai International Organization, founded also by Sathya Sai, and that bears his name, it counts with 13 different international committees, and one of these is the Educational Committee, and its main task is to oversee, to help inspire the work of the Institutes of Sathya Sai Education and also the work of the Sathya Sai schools. So currently we have, as we said, 39 Sathya Sai schools around the world, and we can see that we have a school in Canada, 5 schools in the West Indies. We also have a school in the Dominican Republic, Guatemala, 2 in Mexico, 1 in Argentina, 3 in Brazil, 2 in Colombia, 2 in Ecuador, a school in Paraguay and Venezuela as well. Then we have Sathya Sai schools, 1 in Australia, another in Fiji, another one in New Zealand. And here we see that we have a Sathya Sai school. Of course, there are over 70 Sathya Sai schools in India, but this one we have placed here because it's actually under the umbrella of the Sri Sathya Sai International Organization. So we have the school in India, in Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand as well. And we also have, going to the African continent, we have Sathya Sai schools in Benin. In Congo, there are 2, in Ghana, In Kenya, also 2 Sathya Sai schools, then also in Madagascar, in Nigeria, in South Africa, there are 2 Sathya Sai schools, and also Uganda. So these are the countries that have these 39 Sathya Sai schools that are present all around the world. It's nice also to see some of our images here. So here we see some images from India, Canada, Australia, Ecuador, and Kenya. Again, these schools, the children who benefit from these wonderful programs. And here we see, as I said before, Sathya Sai interacting with students, being so an integral part of not just with his inspiration, but also really being there and interacting so closely with those who were so fortunate to be in his presence too. And we also have what we call partnership schools. So these partnership schools around the world, they're not Sathya Sai schools in the sense that maybe they don't bear his name as such, but they're inspired by the SSEHV program and they adopt it. So in that sense, the teachers are trained and they adopt this philosophy and methodology in their schools. So we have 20 partnership schools currently around the world, 2 of them in Mexico, 2 in USA, 1 in Puerto Rico, 2 in Ecuador, 2 in Peru, 2 in Brazil, 5 in Indonesia, 1 in Latvia, and 3 in Haiti. The 3 schools in Haiti and the 1 in Latvia, actually, it is the Institute of Sathya Sai Education of North Europe, the SSE, that works closely with them to inspire their work and all the training that takes place. And this image that we see is actually from one of the partnership schools in Haiti, which is so nice, as we can see with that logo of the 5 human values. And coming back to the Institutes of Sathya Sai Education, just briefly to remind ourselves, although we know more or less, but the goals of these Institutes of Sathya Sai Education is to provide training in SSEHV for teachers, schools, and even the ministries of education. So for example, in Ecuador or in Thailand, the program has been, it's through the ministries also that they offer it sometimes, or people from the Ministry of Education have either worked in collaboration or asked to be trained. So this is one of the roles also of the ISSE to guide this process and to oversee the work done in that field. Also to develop and implement SSEHV programs in our communities, to provide education, SSEHV for parents and young adults, as we saw through Sai Parenting, through programs for teenagers, to establish professional links with state schools, teacher training colleges, universities, and ministries of education. So for example, right now in Italy too, there's a program that the branch of the Institute is taking care of in Italy for public teachers, and it is inspired and it is based on SSEHV with trainers from Italy. And it is so beautiful because it is actually under the auspices of the Ministry of Education in Italy. So this is something that also the institutes oversee to develop teaching material, training modules and curriculums, as we know, to establish, manage, and supervise Sathya Sai schools, as we mentioned before, and to monitor and evaluate educational standards and accountability, just to ensure that, again, we are meeting the essence and the goals of SSEHV. And just to have a look at the different institutes of Sathya Sai education present around the world, there are 28, and they are in Canada, USA, West Indies, Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Paraguay, Peru, Venezuela, Australia, Fiji, New Zealand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Hong Kong and China, Japan, North Europe and South Europe, as we know, and also one institute in Africa, in South Africa. So these are the 28 institutes around the world. And we also have Sri Sathya Sai colleges and even a university in India in this case. So just coming towards an end of our presentation today, we're just going to go through the main again, we're talking about colleges and even a university. And in this case, most of these we will see are in India. So as we saw, and we started our presentation in 1968, the Sri Sathya Sai Arts and Science College for Women was established in Anantapur. 1 year later, the same arts and college was also established, but for men, and in Vrindavan, so in another part of India. In 1979, the Sri Sathya Sai College of Arts, Science and Commerce was established in Prashanti Nilayam. In 1981, the Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning was also set in Prashanti Nilayam, and we will see how this Higher Learning Institute then became something even more. We will see that now. In the year 2000, the College of Music in Prashanti Nilayam, always bearing his name, Sri Sathya Sai. And then in 2021, an International Center for Human Values in New Delhi. So this was not only for, for educators or teachers, but also for professional people in other fields like business and other fields, as we have mentioned. In 2006, the Sri Sathya Sai Sports Center in Prashanti Nilayam. And in 2007, as we mentioned, what was before the Institute of Higher Learning, now the Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning became the Sri Sathya Sai University. So it is with great satisfaction that we can say that there's also an university that follows this whole program, and that's based on his teachings, and it is the Sri Sathya Sai University. And just some inspiring images here from 1968, when the Sri Sathya Sai College was inaugurated for women in Anantapur. In 1969, the one for men as well, we can see images. In 1979, the College for Men in Prashanti Nilayam. In 1981, the Institute of Higher Learning, which is now a university, as we mentioned. And also, look at this, how beautiful. I mean, whenever I visit India, Prashanti Nilayam, and I see these institutions, I always say, wow, I mean, this beauty is reflected not just in its teachings and within, but also in the structure. So as we can see, for example, here we have these images on the top, and it's the inauguration of the Sri Sathya Sai College of Music. And in 2001, the Sri Sathya Sai Center for Human Values, as we mentioned, in Delhi. And you can see that the Dalai Lama was present there. So it's very inspiring to see. And then in 2006, the inauguration of the Sri Sathya Sai Sports Center. And it's so inspiring to also know that at the time, Dr. Abdul Kalam, who was the president of India at that time, he had a lot of respect for Sathya Sai, and he really admired his work. So he was present there when this sports center was inaugurated. And as we see, Sathya Sai Education and Human Values, of course, it's a spiritual program, but it's such a holistic program because it really covers the needs and it focuses on all the levels of development of the individual. So with the sports, with the music, the arts, taking care of the body, the mind, and of course, the spirit. Yes. So just coming again to an end, this is what we saw throughout this presentation, how SSEHV has developed from 1968 till today, starting with the Bal Vikas, which as we know now is called Sai Spiritual Education Program, which then turned into something more structured and formal as the Sathya Sai Education and Human Values Program, which is implemented in Sathya Sai schools and colleges and communities all around the world. And of course, also the Institute of Sathya Sai Education training thousands of people around the world to be educated and to be able to apply the teachings of this program, this universal program. And as always, we always remember that this program is, of course, it's spiritual, it's educational, and we always use these words, it's transformational. The ones that benefit most is ourselves. So this transformation starts first with ourselves. So SSEHV, it transforms every individual that is touched by its teachings and the inspiration of the founder. But this inspiration then spreads to our families. It does. It truly does. Again, expansion is my life, he said. So it expands, it spreads the light of human values to our families, to our local communities as well, to the countries we live in, and of course, finally, to the world. And I would just like to end with where we started, the founder himself, and very inspiring words from him. And Sri Sathya Sai Baba reminds us, good education is that which teaches the method of achieving world peace, that which destroys narrow-mindedness and promotes unity, equality, and peaceful coexistence among all. So thank you everyone for allowing me to share this inspiring work carried out through the program of Sathya Sai Education and Human Values. And it's all back to you, dear Esma. Thank you once again.